6th of June 1944, D-Day, the Allied invasion of West Europe is on its way. By the time I'm recording these words, D-Day anniversary is really close, and as a modeler, this time I wanted to make something special for the channel. Building an Omaha Beach Diorama was an idea that I kept in my mind since I was a child. During the last 4 months, I've been working, designing, building and painting this diorama, giving all my best. This project has been hard and very challenging, but one thing is clear, this diorama is full of different building and painting techniques that will cover entirely all your needs for building a D-Day diorama. This is Notjustpanzer and welcome to my hobby channel. Let's go for it. Preparation for this project began many months ago. This kind of diorama topic needs special characters for it. And as you know, D-Day required the specific roles and equipment. So from a modeling point of view, if I want to be as historically accurate as possible, just a few scale figure references will fit in my requirements. So, first thing first, after making exhaustive research about all I needed, uniforms, colors, scenography and real photographs, I ended up buying these models. First, some scenography accessories. These mini art check head hooks. These obstacles in the box are really close to the ones placed in the Normandy shore. But I didn't realize about these big issues. Head hooks have some ugly ejector pin marks, and even the 3-part fitting, it's not really good. Next, this old but famous figure box from Dragon. These figures are 20 years old now since their first release, but checking their poses and the accessories inside the box, in my opinion, they seem to be the best option for the diorama. Even sculpted uniform details for the legs, arms and torsos are still quite good. On the other side, ammo patches, accessories and weapons were not so crispy. Second figure box I bought. Sadly, these ranger figures were poorly detailed. General poses were very static, which would make the result look like very unnatural. I already knew about their lack of details. But apart from that, I bought these figures specifically for these parts, which will be a key point for the D-Day uniform and equipment. I expected they could help me in some point of the diorama. And a major improvement and something I consider mandatory for this type of figures are resin heads. This time I bought these Hornet US heads, superbly detailed and with really cool face expressions. Honestly, I can't wait to paint them. So once presentations are finished, let's begin assembling the figures. When building figures, I like to work with each model separately. So I think I focus myself better, curating each character individually. Before beginning with the sanding and cleaning process, first I made some major surgery to ensure a perfect fitting between the resin head and the plastic figure. I used a rotary tool to make a hole in every torso, followed by choosing the specific head and face for each figure. The really high sculpting level of the faces makes unnecessary any explanation to show how detail improves significantly with these resin aftermarkets. Now it's time for some hard cleaning. Figures are nicely detailed, but also this doesn't mean they were nicely molded. I spent a lot of my time cleaning and sanding consciously these parts. I wanted to achieve a smooth surface and avoid any type of flashes when painting. Another detail to improve were the plastic hands. This time it was way easy to fix, and the result is worth enough. Now let me introduce you something, the biggest problem I will be dealing with in this entire diorama. Dragon figures come with the standard US uniform layout, so these guys are wearing the M41 field jacket with the haversack type bags, but first beach assault waves were equipped with an assault vest worn over the jacket, as well as other type of stuff. In this case, 2 of the Rangers figures come with the sculpted assault vest and the specific ammo pouches. These will become super handy to use for converting the other figures. So, as far as I have to sculpt this assault vest to all my figures, and yeah, the 5 of them to be precise, the amount of ammo patches and some of the accessories were insufficient. To fix this, I made some copies to get enough pieces for the entire figures. As I wanted to keep it simple, I used some blue stuff / Ojumaru thermoplastic parts to make some easy one-sided molds. These things are really easy to use, All you need to do is just to submerge the blue stuff in hot water and later press it into the surface you want to copy. For filling the blue stuff molds, I chose this quick dry epoxy putty. As it dries in a matter of minutes, I will be able to finish the copies without wasting too much time in this process. Now, for the assault vest itself, I had no other choice that force myself into some sculpting. Lucky me, the most detailed parts, like the bags and pouches, were already finished. So I only have to make it simple and sculpt the basic shapes of the assault vest. As I'm not very happy with my previous sculpting attempts using milliput putty, this time I took the Tamiya 2 components sculpting putty. I've used this material in the past and it has a great flexibility. At the same time, it's not excessively soft to the touch, something that I think it will be helpful for a sculpting process. Trying to get the best result as possible, I studied the layout of the garment itself and its appearance once all the equipment and accessories had fitted over it. In this occasion, I invested in some dedicated tools for handling the putty. And I realized how useful these gummy brushes are, especially for distributing and flattening the putty. Finally, last details, like small wrinkles and creases, were made using these homemade sculpting tools. When the first layer of putty was dry, it was matter to continue sculpting the missing accessories, like this lifeboat. Again, saving some reference images will help me a lot in the sculpting process. Finally, I added the rest of details like the entrenching tool, canteen, first aid kit, and all these straps for different pieces, keeping in mind that these are plastic figures and not resin ones, and they have been converted. I'm really happy with the result. When the figure was almost completed, I filled all the small gaps with Tamiya grey putty. Every single head was chosen according with the figure position and its role in the diorama. I knew it was going to be a hard task to prepare each figure individually, but I hope once painted and put together they will work fine. Now, before going any deeper in the painting process, let's continue talking about terrain building. In any other case, I would have started both parts, figures and terrain, separately. But this time, as figures will be the main characters, I won't start painting them until the terrain is finished, and I got sure figures will fit perfectly in place. Designing this beach scene was complicated, and it took me more time than I expected until I come up with the final design, trying to place every part in its optimal location. Finally, I got the terrain shape. I decided to go with a curved base with a concave area in the front view, which I will use for creating secondary views for the diorama. As with my previous and very first diorama, the main building material for this terrain will be styrofoam. Using my homemade hot wire cutting machine, first I created some depression for the terrain, and later I cut precisely the foam, bringing out the carved shape. Remembering again my last try, as I got pleased with the result I got, I will use balsa wood again for covering the base sides. Wondering about how to adapt properly the balsa wood to such an angled curved surface, I came up with this idea. Using a wet cloth, I carefully moistened the balsa sheet and I temporarily adapted it to the vase. After a whole night letting it to dry, it was matter to carefully fix the balsa to the vase sides with double-sided tape. Thanks to the cardboard template, I cut carefully the excess of wood. This make a super straight and nice cut along all the vase. Simply perfect. So now let's continue to the terrain itself. For creating the main layer of the beach terrain, I use this air drying clay. I am not very experienced yet about distributing the clay around the vase, so this time I tried to make some flat pieces and later join them in the vase. Working and using small amounts of water really speeded up the job, cause water made the clay slightly easier to spread. As the diorama is supposed to be in a beach area, ground texture should be really soft. Instead of trying to create crispy texture in the surface, I focused my efforts in adapting each element and figures to the clay, so once they were finished, they would fit perfectly in the ground, preventing some levitating effect figures. After rating different options for representing the beach scene itself, I decided to use this AK product. Making some prior tests, I found it really soft textured, but also it tends to be excessively uniform. I mean, if you don't want to achieve the exactly same sand texture along the entire vase, I will have to find some other way, and the final texture was made by diluting the sand paste with some water. First applying the paste directly from the pot and later blending it with its rain using some tap water. This created a disintegrated effect that became even more realistic. In the side, which is supposed to be facing the seawall, I spreaded some small rocks. I selected exclusively rounded rocks as they are supposed to be exposed to the water erosion. For fix them in the vase, I chose to soak them with diluted sand paste. This diluted sand increases slightly the ground level and it will integrate the rocks with the terrain too. Finally, I followed a similar approach for the scenography parts. So at last, it's time for some painting. Starting first with the figures, I primed them using a Vallejo primer. I like to use a black color for figures as it helps to fix the shadows and makes the following painting steps easier. It's really important to be soft when airbrushing, as these are going to be the first paint layers in the figure and I don't want to cover any detail of them. Next step, using white ink, also applied by airbrush, I made a first sketch for the highlighting process. You can totally skip this process if you want to, but I like to make it because it will help me a lot in the future. And I took some reference photos of this sketch to use in the future steps, especially to know where to place highlights and shadows in tricky places. Painting figures involves techniques that we, as scale modelers, are not so used to work with. As you might know, acrylic painting technique is way different from airbrushing tank models or creating some enamel weathering. Before painting, I'll remove the sub-assemblies from each figure. Painting them separately will make things easier and faster. So first, let's dive into face painting. In my case, when I paint figures, the first part I deal with is the face. In my opinion, this is the coolest step. But also, face and skin tones can tell a lot about your figure and what you want to represent. Choosing the right colors and shades will strongly determine your final result. A good way to achieve very realistic results for your figures is to follow a zenithal painting. Painting using this technique will make you to place lighter shades in the upper areas and apply the darker ones in the less exposed parts of the figure. When I paint faces, I start painting first the light skin color, increasing it little by little to the lightest shade. Also, it's key to reduce the area where you apply the paint, just by using the very tip of the brush, so the light effect will be more powerful. For painting shadows, it's just the opposite. Working again with the diluted paint, I carefully apply multiple layers of darker skin colors. In my case, it took me some time to understand it, but shadow skin colors are the ones which create the greatest contrast in a model figure. So I heavily recommend you to not to underestimate them. Just take your time and enjoy the process. Next it comes the so feared eye painting. In this case, I just paint a thin line for drawing the eyeball itself, and later, depending on the figure posing, and in this case specifically, where the figure is supposed to be in the diorama, pupils will vary in their place. The soldier will be facing right, so I displace a little bit each pupil to the right of the face too, just to make it more natural. If you guys want to see a specific video about figure painting in the channel, please leave a comment telling me your thoughts. Finally, after applying some light bird effects, the completely painted figure face looks like this. In the case of the uniforms painting, I wanted to make a brief mention to color management. If you watch carefully D-Day beach photos, you will see how first assault troops are wearing full wet uniforms, cause in most landing areas water level was too high. In this case, I wanted to represent lightly wet uniforms, which makes to paint the uniform colors darker. In every single figure, first, I base coated each part using the same base color. Placing all colors together makes the color value painting easier, so you can see if the whole appearance is too light or dark. In the case of the trousers, I wanted to paint them in a wet finish because of the sea water. These figures are supposed to be storming the beach, so they should be completely wet. So I had to use a darker shade of the base color and be very limited with the highlight shades I applied to the trousers. On the other side, shadow colors I had to use were extremely dark. In the case of the field jacket and the soul vest, like both of them have their base color applied. First, I will start making a first sketch by brush of the main shadow areas. In this case, both colors share a common shadow tone, so I will use this same color for placing the shadows in both areas. This raw sketch helps me to identify the key points, so I can see the entire piece volume better. It is an interesting exercise for figure painting, and also it is a very contrasting technique, cause you can see how just applying a shadow color, these garments of the uniform get very much sharper. Once all these raw shadows are painted, again using the base color, I blend both tones carefully, repainting the undesired areas. It's this careful approach what makes the effect work properly, working each wrinkle individually and creating soft transitions. Continuing now with the highlight application, I decide to use a cold but luminous color for creating a lighter shade. In this case, a good option was to add a small amount of ice yellow to the base color. Now, using the lighter shades, painting will be focused in the more exposed volumes and wrinkles. Once all the highlighting and shadowing process are finished, using a dark brown color, I outline the entire figure. This simple step, applied just after the color highlights and shadows, makes the figure pop. Painting the remaining details is done in the same way, as I showed with the uniform, but in this case, due to their size, we can simplify the process by enhancing the definition of the small details. It's important to take your time and paint carefully, because, believe me, you don't want to ruin all your previous work. For finishing, I'd like to mention these kind of freehand labels I had to paint. Although it took me some time to paint each detail like this in every figure, once they were finished, they look really cool. And yes, you're right, I had to paint them in every figure of the diorama. Moving to the last steps, let's paint the beach terrain. I spent some days collecting photos from the beach itself. Omaha Beach sand color has a lot of variation, especially when the sand is wet, it turns to some kind of grey-green brownish tone. So for priming the entire terrain, I choose once more the black primer. Using black as a base will allow me to create some shading effect to achieve a more desaturated look for the wet sand colors. I applied 2 generous coats of primer, and I also used this same color for painting the base sides. Using now Tamiya acrylics, I started painting the sand. A good thing about black primer is that I can use it to my advantage. At first, I didn't paint the footprints and recessed areas, creating some fake volumes thanks to the color contrast. Next, I took a lighter color to paint the flatter and more exposed areas. Applying different color values will help me to create different terrain levels, and in this specific case, I needed to paint 2 sides in a different way. You, the viewer, will distinguish better which is the direction of the entire beach just by watching the different colors of the sand. Finally, using some diluted clear varnish, I applied some random passes over the base for enhancing the wet sand effect. The good thing about Tamiya Clear is that it dries really quick, and the protective coat is rock hard. By the time of 1944, Omaha Beach was a rocky beach in a big part. Rocks covered more surface that we can see nowadays, so for the diorama, these rocks have a key role too. To paint them, I used almost exclusively cool colors, as I wanted to create a cold temperature atmosphere. In this project, I ended up painting each small rock individually, separating them from the ground level. Once the entire base was painted with acrylics, I took out some oils and enamels for making some selective weathering. Cause in this case terrain surface is very porous and it absorbs the paint very fast. First I applied some oil washes in the rock accumulations, taking care to remove the excess and blend in the oil paint. Applying an oil wash not only increases the contrast, but in this case it helped me to create a fake shadow effect between rocks and sand. The following step, and as I wanted to keep the base simple, was to apply some selective dark earth washes to all the small recesses, and especially the footprints. You can see now the whole result, and how this terrain base works in combination with the beach obstacles, applying small details over the terrain itself, as the small rocks and all the sand texturing makes the base to look like a Normandy beach. Also adding those scenography obstacle elements increases the general volume of the scene and create some interesting focal points of reference, really helpful for size comparisons. Finally, once the terrain base is painted completely, it's time to glue all the figures. By this time, the fitting adjustments I made before painting became super useful. As you might see, there is no need to make some terrain corrections when the figure is glued to the base. And now everything is put together, it reminds me to classic movies like The Longest Day. So, this is the final result. Honestly, this is my most ambitious project ever, not specifically for the skills needed to accomplish it, but because of the time management. Although I had this project in my mind from 1 year ago, I started working on it last February, so I only had almost 4 months to complete it all. From the entire diorama, I found sculpting and modifying the figures the most difficult and challenging techniques, maybe due to my completely lack of experience, but also because in this diorama, the main characters are just these 5 figures, so there was no room for failing. All in all, I'm pretty happy with the result. I wanted to make this project like my small tribute to the historic events that took place 80 years ago. This is my first time facing a complete diorama layout design on my own, and I have learned super valuable lessons for future projects, especially about abstract design and main characters placing in a diorama. Of course, there are plenty of things I could improve, especially about figure painting quality, but in the overall, I think the entire work is very well balanced. If you like this video and you want to know more about diorama building, I want to encourage you to click in this video, because I'm pretty sure you will find the content inside super interesting. As always, I hope you found this video useful or at least interesting. So thanks for watching, and I see you in the next one.